Hello, everybody, and welcome to the latest episode of the Nordic Football Podcast. My name is Jonathan Fadugba, and I'm delighted to say that we have a special guest on the show this week. We have been trying to get as many guests as possible, and we are really thrilled to be able to invite the following guest on the show. It is none other than David Selini. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, who is the assistant coach at Värnamo. Now, Värnamo have a really interesting and exciting backstory. We did actually cover them last season a little bit, just in terms of the promotion season. But of course, so if you go back in the archives, on Twitter or on Spotify, iTunes, wherever you get your podcasts, you can maybe dip into that and have a little listen back to the interview with Robin Asterhead. But of course, there's been a lot of turnaround of Värnamo since then. Robin has since moved on to a role at Malmo in a scouting capacity. He was previously one of the head coaches at Värnamo in their promotion season. Don't forget, this is their first ever year in Allsvenskan, the club, in their, I think, 100-plus year history. So it's been a really exciting time and a really exciting campaign for Värnamo. Midway through the season, they're currently 13th, just above the relegation zone. Of course, all expectations by many were that they would perhaps get relegated, but they're fighting above the waterline at the moment in time. And I'm really pleased to say that we're going to be joined on this podcast by David Selini, who's the assistant coach at Värnamo, as I mentioned. So, David, good to have you on the show. How are you today?
Thank you, Jonathan, and thanks for having me on. I'm doing well. We had a tough loss yesterday, but we are, as we normally say, when we start a new week, the sun rose again. So we are now working hard to prepare for Hammarby away on Sunday. But despite recent results, life is pretty good down here.
Yeah, and it's really good to get you on the show. I mean, I know you're quite popular even on Twitter, seeing a lot of your sort of threads and posting tactical things and little bits you're working on. So it's really nice to see that you're very open about how the club works and kind of what you work on in training. So we will talk about that a little bit as the show goes on. But you touched on there a little bit of disappointment from this weekend's result. We can't really get away without just starting on that result. Just very briefly, I mean, a 3-2 defeat to AIK, who were one of the biggest teams in the league, obviously biggest teams in Swedish football. First time the club's obviously played them in a league fixture at home, I think ever. So definitely ever in Allsvenskan anyway. Just to recap the kind of what the flow of the game. AIK took the lead in the 23rd minute. John Guidetti, of course, formerly of Manchester City and Swedish under-21 international, obviously many caps for Sweden. Marcus Antonsson equalised. Wanderson made it 2-1, and then bit of a nightmare. Robin Tihi owned goal on loan from AIK himself, and Stefanelli in the 69th minute made it 3-2 to AIK, and that's how the game finished. So, yeah, I mean, we can't really ignore that game because it was so eventful. Just wanted to get your brief thoughts on that match. David, what was your sort of perspective on that, as it's quite fresh in the memory?
Yeah, I think we always say that we watch games in different ways. So we watch the games live, obviously, with all the emotions at play, and then we watch the game back a few times, just taking all those emotions and the atmosphere and everything away from the analysis, and then we look at the statistics, the stats of the game. So I think the image I have of the game now and the perception I have of what unfolded is very similar to what I experienced live. I think we had a really good game. I think we started quite poorly, didn't really get into the correct positioning in order to play past the press of AIK. So we had a bit of struggles initially, despite creating a few dangerous moments, and then they scored in a period where I think they looked pretty good. And after that goal, I think we totally managed to wrestle control of the game and ran the game for long spells and really played like the team we want to be in terms of how we get the ball forward with control and threatening in behind and playing a very vertical football, and then pressing them high and getting the ball back when we lose it. So I think we had a really good performance. We turned the game around, and I don't know how if you know about that, but AIK, I think they haven't lost a game being a goal up since like 2017. So for us to turn the game around was strong already there, and then I felt like we would go on and win the game, but then, as you said, we made some mistakes at the back where we were punished by AIK, and they then managed to use all the experience, I think, to close the game out in the last 20 minutes, and we felt kind of kind of shocked with how the goals were scored. So I think we struggled to get back to the way we played before for those 40 minutes between their first and second goal, where we were really, really good. And we had some nice opportunities at the end, but couldn't manage to score an equalizer. And it felt really tough to leave that game without a point, especially for the boys who I think had made a really good performance. So we take a lot of positives from the way we played the game, but we feel disappointed that we couldn't bring a positive result from that performance. So kind of mixed feelings, but pretty low last night. But now having watched the game back twice today, I feel like we will push on and be even stronger, both on an individual level and on a collective level too.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, just a quick question. The biggest talking point, I suppose, from the game was the kind of Robin Teehee situation on loan from AIK, played for Värnamo and obviously scored an own goal. A lot of talk around that incident. Just wanted to very quickly, like in a brief sentence, maybe, obviously, you work with Robin. Just wanted to get your perspective on, should that rule change? Do you think it was, I mean, there's a lot of debate about should loan players be allowed to kind of play for their parent, play against their parent club? And obviously in England, for example, it's not allowed. What's your perspective on that? And, just in terms of how Robin, I know there's been a lot of kind of hate from, I think, on social media, which is you always get, doesn't it? And little things like that. Just what's your perspective on that in general, just as a talking point? Because a lot of people, I think in Sweden, it's a big talking point this week so far.
Yeah, definitely. I think just obviously online abuse or abuse of any kind for anyone is shameful, I think. So it's very sad to see that Robin's been a victim of that. I think knowing him and the sort of person he is, he will without doubt he will become stronger and he will continue to improve. He's only 20, but he's a leader in our dressing room and in our team, and I think he's had a really good season so far. And I think this will only help him become a better player and more experienced player. And in terms of the rule, I think for us it's good to have him playing for us. I think we brought him in to play as many games as possible. So if we hadn't been allowed to use him, we would probably have had, in our opinion, a weaker team because we start him every week. So I think from the outside, I can understand why the rule is being debated. I think for us, regardless of now he made a mistake, but we had players making mistakes in other games as well. So I don't think him being on loan from them impacted anything that happened on the pitch. I think he was probably more set on winning the game than anyone else, just because of him coming from there. And then I think he would have taken the loss harder than anyone else because he's an absolute winner, that boy. So I think for us the rule is good as it is. I think we want to use our best players for as many games as possible, but from a fan perspective, I understand why when stuff like this happens, it becomes a debate. But I heard nothing of the sort was it 2 weeks ago when AIK lost to Mjällby and they had an on-loan goalkeeper saving every shot that came at him. So I think it's been sort of blown out of proportions. But I think as long as the parent club are fine with the player playing against them, I see no problem for us in using him.
Yeah, exactly. And just to get a bit of reaction, Kim Hellberg also commented after the match, just for a bit of context. He said, Robin is a great professional footballer. He's probably the one who is most saddened that we did not win today. He will play on the bigger stage and this will make him better. We are there for him if needed and we only have love for him. And it sounds like sort of, David, you share those sentiments, obviously working with him. We funnily enough, we had Ashley Coffey, who who plays for AFC Eskilstuna and played with Robin last season, I think. And I remember him on the podcast sort of praising Robin. And I've seen him, obviously, since he broke through in AIK, and he's definitely a very exciting player. I don't think you can really question his professionalism, but, these things happen. And it's, I guess it's a talking point, isn't it, for the moment? But let's go back to Värnamo. As we mentioned, an incredible story for the club. First ever time in Allsvenskan this year after, so long in the lower tiers. Kind of fighting this season to maybe stay in the division. And you've made a good fist of it, to be fair. Like, I think, how would you sum up the season so far? Because, I think there's a kind of perspective. There's only obviously been 3 wins to date from the first sort of half of the season, pretty much. But at the same time, you've had some really creditable results. A draw with, for example, Malmo at home, managed to grab a 0-0 there. Beat Hammarby 1-0, of course, a fantastic result there. Yesterday's game against AIK, very close to getting a result. I remember the first game of the season, even IFK Värnamo away, very close. So it seems to me like you've kind of performed maybe a little bit better than some might expect, and I think the stats also bear that out. What's your overall perspective on the season so far in Värnamo's first ever Allsvenskan campaign?
Yeah, I think you summed it up quite well, actually. I think in terms of results, you can look at it two ways, I think, because if someone would have told us that with half the season played, we would be above not only the relegation, but also the playoff spot, I think most people would have said that's a really good performance. And I think we would have probably taken that. But then you look at the results we've had. I think you mentioned some games that where we have gotten points where we wouldn't have expected us getting points from Hammarby and Malmö, for example. But I think our performances have been really good, and we are not satisfied pleased with where we're at in the table. I think we're not pleased with the amount of points we have, because I think if you look at, we feel we should have won the game yesterday. We felt we were the better team, and I think we had a game against Mjällby where we conceded in the 95th minute in sort of chaotic fashion from nowhere really, and then we had a game against Sirius at home where we felt we dominated the game but couldn't make the breakthrough and drew that game 0-0. So we feel like just in those 3 games we've lost 7 points that would have had us in I think comfortable in mid-table on 20 points. And then if you look at the stats, the underlying stats, we are somewhere, depending on where you look, but Y-Scout, for example, has us on 20 expected points, which would go quite well with that, and then we have 13, so that's 7 points. We feel like we should have had more, and also the stats back up, and I think in terms of scored expected goals, we are expected to have scored 20. We've scored 14, so quite a big underperformance there. And same thing for goals against, where we have conceded 25 and have an expected goals against of 21. So stats aren't everything, but all these metrics have us somewhere around 7th to 9th. So I think our performances have merited more than we have gotten. And I think the challenge for us for the rest of the season will be to try and get more points, and by doing that, getting better results from already good performances. I think we've had 15 games where we only feel that one has been below ourselves. I think we had a poor performance against Sundsvall, which came at a difficult time for us when we lost 2 key players to injury, and we had some new players not being able to play because their transfer window opened a few days later, and we had to make a lot of changes to the team, which kind of made our performances quite incohesive, I think. And that's the only one where we feel we haven't lived up to the team we want to be, playing the sort of football we want to play. And I'm sure we'll touch on that. But as you mentioned, in all those games, regardless if we play Varberg away or if we play Degerfors at home, or if we play Hammarby at home or Djurgården away, it's the same. You see the same team. You see the same football being played, but then the system or the build-up shape or the pressing shape will change because we change. I think our football is very much principle or concept driven rather than system and formation driven. So we are very flexible like that. But the common theme is that we played our football in every game, bar that Sundsvall game where we didn't perform to the ability we know we have. So I think we've had a good first half in terms of performances. I think we have had a good first half in terms of where we're at in the table, but I think we've had a poor first half in terms of getting the most out of those performances in terms of points. So I think that would sum up my feelings for the first half of the season.
And I mean, just in terms of the table, as I mentioned, 3 points above the relegation playoff place in a 16-team league, of course. 14 goals scored, 25 conceded, 3 wins, 8 defeats, 4 draws from 15 games. So we're exactly at the midway point of your season. Exactly what you say there, David, is correct. I mean, in terms of Y-Scout, our partners Y-Scout, you've got you're 9th in the table for expected goals, and you're 8th in the table for expected goals against. So to be honest, your fair sort of placing probably should really be around mid-table. but you're obviously 13th. So it seems like maybe just a little bit of luck isn't quite going your way, and maybe as the season goes on, that could sort of even itself out a little bit. Let's, I want to sort of speak about yourself as well, because there was a lot of change at the end of last season at Värnamo. Obviously Robin Astor had moved on, and the new team came in with yourself. Just tell us how your role at Värnamo came about. How did you get into this role? And we'll talk a bit more widely about your own path into football. But let's start with kind of how did the role actually come about for you to move to Värnamo?
Yeah, of course. So Kim Hellberg, the head coach now, he was appointed at the back end of last season when Robin had decided to go to Malmö. So Kim came in, and I had gotten to know Kim a bit in Norrköping, because he was assistant manager at IFK Norrköping, and I had joined a club called Sylvia, who played in the third division of Swedish football, so that would be the equivalent to League One. I joined that club in the August of last year, and that club works very closely with Norrköping. It's not like a feeder club, but
it's like a partner club, isn't it? I think
it's a partner club, and people come and go in between. So coaches go in between, maybe going from coaching a youth team to becoming a head coach for Sylvia, for example. That's Kim used to be the head coach of Sylvia before becoming assistant at Norrköping, for example, and now the same path was taken by Anes Mravat, who is the assistant coach at IFK Norrköping. He was the head coach at Sylvia when I was there last season, and from there I got to know Kim, and Anes, who I worked with, he recommended me to Kim that because Kim wanted to bring an assistant with him, and from there we had a few meetings and a few chats, and it felt really good, and Kim obviously felt that I could add something to his staff down here. So that's sort of how it came about, and then it's been really good. I think we've created a very good partnership, and that's sort of the backstory.
Yeah, I mean, you're according to Twitter, you're a UEFA B licensed coach as well. Are you Swedish origin, or you tell us a bit about your background, kind of thing? How did you get into football in general as a coach?
Yeah, so I was born in Stockholm. My parents are Swedish. My dad is half Italian, so that explains my last name.
Selini, yeah.
So yeah, that's that story. And then my mom is from the north of Sweden, so I was born in Stockholm, lived there for a few years, and then we moved north when I was 8. So really started playing football in Stockholm, then continued playing and played at semi-professional level at a club called Boden, which was in Division 2 at the time. So that would be League 2. And then I started coaching when I was 19. Because I had an injury, so I started helping out with my younger brother's team, and then really fell in love with it, I would say. So I became I was playing for the first team, coaching youth teams, and then became under 17, under 19 coach. I coached the district team in we have like 25 districts in Sweden, and like we're with young players. So when you're between, I think, 14 and 16, so you go around and you play against other districts, and it's basically from that pool of players that the first national teams will be picked. So I coached that team for a few years. I coached the academy teams at Boden, and then I think 5 years ago now I moved to Linköping in the south, where I started to become a upper secondary school teacher in English and history, and coached a bit on the side, and then found myself to Sylvia last season. With Anes, as I said, and then ended up down here. So that's the story. Is the coaching story is 10 years old, I think. I'm 28 at the time now, so almost a decade. But the journey from the north to the south now has been a long one, as you know, from the geography of Sweden. It's a vast country. Yeah. So the coaching journey has been reasonably quick, I think, but the geographical one has been far longer.
Yeah, for sure. It's a big country, especially north to south. Many hours traveling and logistical, getting around stadiums and things like that. I think for coaching is it's a bit of a challenge. I think that people maybe sometimes don't appreciate when you look at Swedish football. I mean, Just wanted to sort of touch on, you talked about kind of how you got into the role and your time obviously at Sylvia as well, which, as you mentioned, is kind of a partner club with North Shopping. Let's talk about your kind of role as a coach. You know, like I said, you've been putting in the hours to get to this position. What are your kind of day-to-day duties as an assistant coach at Värnamo? You know, how do you divide your time? Maybe tell us maybe your sort of average week, what goes on. You mentioned earlier in the show that you've already watched the Värnamo IFK game twice today already. So, you know, talk to the listeners about your day-to-day duties as an assistant coach at Värnamo.
Yeah, just to give some sort of context before going into that, like the staff we have, it's a very small club I'm working at. So the full-time staff basically consists of me and Kim. So Kim being the head coach, me being the assistant coach. Then we have a lot of part-time people around the club that mainly come in when the sessions are due, basically in the day. So we have two other assistant coaches. That's Tony Johansson and Jonas Tern. Then we have I think two physios who basically divide their time. So when one is here, the other is working at their practice, and then they switch. And then we have a goalkeeping coach as well, working part-time. And that's basically it in terms of the actual on the pitch staff. We have obviously people working with kits and stuff as well, also being part-time. And then we have a sporting director who's full-time. So basically on the football side, we have 3 full-time employees. So it's Enes Akhmetovic, the sporting director, then it's Kim, and then it's me. So the day-to-day work is basically that the 3 of us, we sit in, we've decorated, I would say, a room in the clubhouse, which used to be an old boardroom. So we just changed it up a little bit, put some tactics boards in there, and Enes put some scarves on the walls to create some sort of homier club feeling. And then in that room, we do everything. So Enes sits at one end, me and Kim sit opposite each other at a massive table where we have, you know, whatever it could be, tactical pads or training drills and Y Scout reports, stuff like that. And then from there, we begin every week or every week, depends on when we play, but post match, I would say we tend to watch the game back a few times. We work a lot with video analysis. We have video before every session virtually. So that would be, we train, a normal week, we would have 6 or 7 sessions, 2 double sessions, and then a few single sessions. So it's about preparing video for those sessions. So say we're doing like the game yesterday, we might want to look tomorrow at build-up play. So then today we look at bringing some clips from that game we played and how we could have done things better from this game, particularly in the first 20 minutes. And then when we did the right things, how the game opened up for us and got into the way we want to play. And then we show that to the players, and we might tie that into earlier games or even training sessions, because we record all training sessions as well. And then from preparing those video meetings, we obviously prepare training sessions, and we prepare analysis of opponents. So I would say at bigger clubs, you might have more people doing a lot of different roles. I think me and Kim are basically on the football side on the pitch, where we run everything like that. So we do everything together, sitting in that room, analyzing, planning, preparing for opponents, preparing training sessions, and the overall always trying to improve the style you want to play. So as I said, it's very principle driven. So we try and work with that every day in training. So it's about creating the best possible conditions for the players to get better at playing the way we want to play. And then the results of games aren't the most important. It's more how can we use the performances we've had into becoming better every day. So it's a lot of work goes into preparing and planning that. So I think that it's difficult for me to give you a sort of schedule for what a day looks like. It's very much doing as much as possible in the time we have. So long hours, lots of fun, lots of work, but it's a brilliant job to have. So there's no complaining. It's just that's sort of the overall context that we do everything in that room, the two of us, and then we have Enes there always giving input and having questions for more organizational questions
of course.
around the club.
And he's a bit of a club legend as well, I think, in terms of the history. I think we touched on it in the last episode when we did Robin Asterhead as well. But I think, you mentioned the staff there, and it's probably important to point out at this point for anyone who doesn't actually know about Värnamo as a club. I believe I'm right in saying I think Malmo, obviously the champions, have roughly, I think, between 30 and 40 full-time staff outside of the full-time, obviously the playing squad. Whereas, as you just mentioned there, you've got 2 to 3 full-time staff members. So it just gives a little bit of the context in terms of how incredible the story of Värnamo is to be where you are, and even to be just fighting in Allsvenskan, in the first place, let alone, sort of doing quite well and having metrics that show a mid-table side. So yeah, just a little bit of context there. It's really an incredible job you guys are doing on such a short kind of manpower staff and things, and even the budgets. If you look at the club budget, I mean, I don't have the specifics, but I know it's obviously several times less than some of the other bigger clubs in Sweden. Just wanted to sort of ask you about kind of you mentioned there you're always trying to get the best out of players and how you do that. I mean, the manager, obviously Kim Hellberg, he's mentioned he's won a lot of plaudits for the playing style, and you work with him day to day. I mean, what would you say you've learned so far from working with him? Let's take a look at for example, the AIK game as a bit of context, and I'm interested to just get your general thoughts and perspectives. It seemed to me from the AIK game, for example, that you maybe had a tactic of sort of trying to get into the wide areas and kind of get crosses into the 6-yard box to Antonsson. Obviously, he scored a goal from a cross. I think it was Magashi with the cross, and then obviously Wanderson's goal, you also opened up spaces just outside the box, and he obviously had a longer range effort, didn't he, that sort of creep through. What do you base your tactics on, kind of game by game, or do you base it on your own style of play? And what is the Kim Hellberg sort of Värnamo style of play, and what kind of how do you divide that between your own style and then obviously the opponent that you might be playing?
Yeah, good question. I think we will. You will have to stop me if I go on for too long here, because I have probably I will try and describe it as best to the best of my ability. But I mean, think
firstly, just answer. Am I right about what I say about the AIK game? That was my interpretation of it. I don't know.
Yeah,
I'm wrong.
I think it's not so much. We tend to divide. Let's see. If you take the penalty area, obviously you can look at assist zones and that sort of thing, and we try to get into the box as much as possible with control, and that might be, if that the best way to get into the box would be through going wide and then maybe going into those assist zones, that's fine. If the best way to get in to the box is by going through central areas, then we will try and have weapons and methods to do that. And then if the best way to get into the box is just going in behind the opponent, we want to do that with control. So that then it's really important for us to do maybe what we did for the second goal, for the first goal, when we go from a goal kick, where we go into our center backs, and I think we had a midfielder dropping off. The ball is played into a center midfielder, and then that player is in the AIK team, and that gives us a better option to go in behind than going from maybe the center back straight away. So it's about creating conditions to get in behind a team like AIK yesterday with control. So then we could get into midfield, and from there we can play that final pass in behind, and then we can run the ball into the box. So it's about creating conditions to create the best possible opportunity to score goals, and that for us means getting players in between the posts, getting players in positions where we ask questions of the opponent that they have to pick between. We like to say pick between two bad options. So if they decide to go right, we will have an option or an alternative to go left, and we will always try and play in a way that create advantages for us based on how the opponent plays. So that ties into your question about how much we base stuff on the opponent. I think before going into that, I would just say that the way we attack the box, I think, might be one of the most detailed I've ever seen, because Kim is absolutely incredible at the way he organizes attacking play. I think not organizing in a way where you limit decision making, that you have to play certain patterns. That's not what we do. As I said, we try and create conditions where the players will make decisions based on what they see and what they interpret on the pitch, but we will provide them with possible scenarios and possible ways of unlocking a defense. And I think Kim is extraordinary at creating that in training, and then we see that in games. So that sort of goal we score from Magashi and Antonsson, we've scored that in training 50 times, and I think he has made that run towards that sort of space 100 times. But then again, he's also made runs to different spaces when those spaces are open. So it's about creating those sort of opportunities where we feel we have good chance to score. So we don't want to cross the ball from the sideline because we think it's very difficult to score from that. We want to maybe get into a bit more narrow position to be able to finish on one touch, which gives us a better chance to score a goal. So that's sort of our game, I think, is very, very good. I think that's all down to the knowledge and the work Kim has put in throughout his career to really improve that sort of ability in his team to actually score goals when you get to the opposition box. And that sort of idea of creating difficult situation for the opponent, that they have to choose one way to go, and then we can go the other way, and vice versa. That sort of goes through our entire style of play. So when we build from the back, we want to be very proactive because we feel that no one will give us anything. Same with the way we press the ball. We want to be proactive because we will not just wait for someone to give us the ball. We want to go and take the ball because no one at this level will hand anything to us. We have to take it for ourselves. And that goes into the way we attack in build-up as well, because if AIK, like yesterday, decide to press us in a 4-4-2, we want to have certain structures where we create possibilities to beat that press, and we want to create advantages against them. So obviously when a team tries to press you, they do that because they feel that they will create an advantage against us. So for us, it's about adapting our sort of positioning on the pitch, our structures, to the way they defend, because we believe different spaces open up depending on which defensive systems the opponents use, because most teams use zonal defensive systems in Sweden. So when an AIK striker breaks out to press our center back, for example, we want to have options where we can make their try at pressing us become an advantage for us. So we want to take advantage of them pressing us, if that makes sense. So from them, like sometimes teams will press as well, and I could do that at some point when we weren't good enough to solve the pressure, then they get an advantage. But we want to be able to maybe create different pass angles for the ball carrier, so that when they press, it becomes an advantage for us because we can beat that press, and then we can go and play from there, like for the goal Antonsson scored, when we then go in within their team and can play the ball forward from there and try to be as vertical as possible when we have the chance. And that we have a principle, we call it follow the press. So when the opponent presses us, that tells us that we have to do something, and that might be a fullback following a winger pressing, and then you have to follow him on the outside so you get space to play. Or it might be a center midfielder playing behind the striker, and then when he goes to press, you follow that press, and then you just move out to the side to get the ball, and then you've opened a big space for you to play. And if a midfielder is following you, then we want to follow that press so someone can drop into that space. It's so we take advantage of what the opponent does all the time. That's the sort of idea, and that creates a compact sort of attacking shape, and from that we have good conditions to counter press when we lose the ball, so we can be proactive in that phase as well. So I think there are a lot of things that go into it, and we work on this every day and in different training sessions where we try and expose the players to situations that might happen, and sometimes situations that are even more complex than the game, so they will be well prepared when they come to a game to take advantage and be able to recognize what the opponent is doing. Because if we play at Djurgården in front of 20,000 and the fans are singing, it's difficult for Kim on the sideline to tell the players, oh, you have to use this structure. So we try and prepare the players as best as possible on the possible, for example, defensive shapes of the opponent, how they might press us, and how we can adapt to that and adapt our structures, and then we want the players to be able to solve those situations themselves on the pitch. And sometimes it works really well, sometimes it doesn't work, and then we might have to change it at halftime. So long answer, but that's sort of the overarching idea, that we have to be proactive, we have to play our style, we have to take everything if we want to get results, because no one will hand anything to us for free.
Yeah, of course. And I mean, if you adapt sort of, I mean, it's a great answer. And if you let's take the specifics. Let's say like AIK, for example, you mentioned there, they've been sort of kind of playing with a 4-4-2, haven't they, at certain times, or 2 in midfield structure of late. Versus, like, say, let's take a Hammarby, for example, when you obviously beat them. How do you, to what extent do you work on specifics? For example, you've mentioned there, like, if someone presses, you want to try and use that to your advantage. How do you then, can you give maybe an example of like how you would then adapt that, maybe based on the opponent? So I don't know, let's say, like you said there, a midfielder breaking into to press, that obviously might open up space in the midfield. Versus, say, like you could even take, for example, like a Mjällby, who maybe play a bit of a deeper block, or a GIF Sundsvall playing in a different kind of sort of setup, maybe a 3-5-2 kind of model, or 3-4-3. Like, how, I just want to get a bit of idea of how you sort of how long it takes you to sort of figure out the specifics of an opponent, and then how much time you have to work on that, if that makes sense. Just using IFK as a specific example, with the fact that you played them most recently.
Yeah. So we prepared a few different solutions. So we started the game playing with, if you want to describe it, as simple as possible, we played 4-2-3-1. So we had our fullbacks trying to play in the same line as their wingers, and then we wanted to have 2 central midfielders and 2 centre backs, basically controlling the build up and moving in different angles. And then we had 3 number 10s and 1 striker. So we wanted the fullbacks to provide the width for us, and the width for us is always based on the width of the opponent's defensive structure. So we don't just put people out wide at the touchline, because we believe we become a bit too stretched in our attacking shape, and the ball moves a little bit slower, and then we also lose the opportunity for us to counter press in the way we do, which we work a lot on. So we weren't sure if they were going to press us with 1 striker and 1 10, or if they wanted to go with 2 strikers. So as you saw in the game, we kind of didn't get in the right positions initially, when we had basically 2 center backs and 2 center midfielders playing ahead of each other, and then we managed to get it a little bit better after around 15 minutes, when we dropped 1 midfielder on the outside to be able to create better angles and better positioning to play. And since we knew that the strikers would press, it was mostly about how do we then move around with those 4 players, the 2 center backs and the 2 center midfielders, and creating conditions for them to take the ball forward, but being aware of maybe the wingers of AIK breaking out the press, because if the right winger will go on our center back, then it's important for us, for our left back to be very active, to maybe get the ball on the outside. And that's what I mean, like following the pressure, that if the right winger goes, we want the left back to go with him, but trying to get the ball above him. So when the ball pass is played, he can take the ball forward, and the distance for the right back is quite far to break out to press the left back then. And if he breaks out, then we want someone to attack the spacing behind. So again, taking advantage of what they do. And then I think we felt that we didn't really do it as well as we wanted to. So we changed after 28 minutes and put, so we had 3 10s, and the central 10 there, Magashi, he then moved up to play as one of 2 split strikers. So we played him basically in the line with Marcus Antonsson high up. So we played 2 center forward, you could call them, but very wide. So they tried to play as close as possible to the AIK fullbacks. So we wanted to try and stop them going, because we felt they wanted to go and press us. So by having those 2 players high and a little bit wider, we tried to pin their back 4. And I think that created a bit more space for us to play in the middle, and gave us more time to take the ball forward, and that helped us control the game better. And then both our goals came from that exact play, where the first one is Wendersson playing the ball into the spacing behind their defense with Magashi running into that space, and then it's difficult for the center backs to go out and defend, because he's sort of in a not wide, because he's inside the width of the back 4, but it still makes it difficult for them to leave that space to go and mark him. So he gets that advantage of going in early. And then the second goal comes from our left back Albin playing the ball in that inside left channel for Antonsson, who makes a run in, and then he goes back, and we have 2 or 3 passes before Wendersson takes a shot. So I think that worked really well. But that's just an example of how we might change on the pitch within that game. And the games against Hammarby and Kalmar have been crazy, because they are quite similar to us. They can change their structures a lot. So for those games, we just worked in training on challenging the team we have. So we play 11v11 a lot on the pitch, where we tell them to go out. You can build up in whatever structure you want to use, and then it's a challenge for the other team to press that team based on how we maybe press a back three or how we press a back four or whatever we do. So they have to challenge each other in training, and if one team builds up with a back three, then we want to press them in a certain way, and then if you press well, then that attack team might change and build up with 2 center backs and 3 narrow players in front with like inverted fullbacks or something, and then you have to adapt to that and press that. So that's how we try and create this atmosphere of being very, very flexible. And then when we go and play Hammarby or go and play Kalmar, we can be aware that they will change a lot. So it's up to us to try and create advantages against their changes as well. And Kim and me and everyone else on the pitch and on the sidelines, we try to create those, to as quickly as possible to figure out what's happening, and then it's about getting those messages across, and that might be difficult. So the players have to be prepared at knowing what to do, and we place a lot of responsibility on certain players. So we mentioned Robin earlier. He's very good at reading the game in terms of how do this team actually presses, where is the space we want to use. Then he might organize the defensive players. Okay, we need to do this, and then we have players further up who can help organize the attacking players. We need to be looking for these spaces because they open up, and we might need to run in behind with our 10, so we might need to drop off and link. So it's difficult to explain in words. I think it's better to show, but that's sort of the overarching ideas that we want to be as difficult to play against as possible. We want teams, like when we prepare for Kalmar, we have no idea how they're going to play, because they might build up with 3 players, with 2 players. They might have 1 6, 2 6s, 3 6s. They might play with 3 10s. They might play without wide players. They might play with 4 wide players. Like, you never know how they're going to play. Same with Hammarby. And we want to be that team for other teams, so that when they come to the game, they will look at us and feel, oh, this is going to be difficult. We have to be really active here, because then we have probably reached where we want to be. We want to be as difficult as possible to play against when we have the ball, which I've basically talked about now, but also when we don't have the ball, because we want to get it back as quickly as possible and as high up as possible, so we can play on the opponent's half where we feel we are really, really good.
Yeah, and it sounds like a lot of work goes into sort of, like you said, off the ball kind of pressing, when to press. And just to give a bit of a statistical analysis of the game, I mean, according to Y-Scout, you actually manage more shots on target in the game than AIK. Way more passes, 497 completed passes versus AIK 269 completed passes, 65% possession to AIK's 35% possession. So when you look at it, no one would really believe, if you're reading those stats out, that you've got a team here with tiny budget and sort of 2 or 3 full-time staff against this massive club AIK. You know what I mean? So it really is a testament to the work you guys are doing, and speaks volumes about how much work and how much work goes into it. I mean, one thing that you're quite well known for, I think, on Twitter is you have some really fascinating threads, really delving deep into the coaching and what you work on in training. And I was reading one of your threads about kind of using mannequins to sort of help play through the press and things like that. I mean, I'll be honest, I'm not a UEFA B coach, so some of it is a little bit over my head in a sense. It's very detailed and really educational, which is great, to learn. What's the inspiration for that, and kind of how digestible do you think it is? I mean, how easy is it to learn this sort of stuff? I guess it must take a lot of theory work and things like that to kind of understand these things. I mean, one thing you mentioned there, David, is obviously, for example, you mentioned sort of having a defensive line in line with the wide area, the wingers. It's having your fullbacks in line with the opponent's wingers in terms of where you position them. How much time does it take to learn these sort of concepts and things for people, maybe coaches who want to maybe get into football, listening to this as a potential wannabe coach?
I mean, for us, it's very natural because we do this every day. And I think even though me and Kim hadn't worked together before, I think we share very similar ideas on how we want our teams to play. And I think that's something. So both me and him have worked at lower levels. He's coached at Division 5 level. I have done the same. Actually, I started last season coaching in Division 5, and then I went Division 1, and now I'm at this club. But we've basically ever since starting, both of us about a decade ago, we've worked really hard at becoming the very best we can be, and putting a lot of time and effort into creating, styles of play and training sessions, and taking as much inspiration as possible from different angles of the game. And then you look at how I can incorporate certain stuff I like from teams I watch on TV, and in terms of that sort of thing, and sort of the detail is like, we just look at how can we make it possible for, in that case against AIK, we used the fullbacks wide, but when we played Mjällby, we used them narrow because we felt those players were suited to that, and then the players we had yesterday were suited to playing wide in that specific game. So that goes into it as well. So our right back Freddy Winst, he played wide yesterday, and he's really good in the final third picking passes, but in certain games he's played as a central midfielder with the ball, because we feel he can do that as well. And in that game we wanted that, and maybe used a high winger instead of a wide fullback. So that's the stuff we work on in training. So all the players, they do all the things basically in training. So you mentioned the mannequins. We use mannequins in possession games because we feel that when we have them on, we use them as defenders basically. So if you hit the mannequin, your team loses the ball. And if you play a game where you're maybe playing, I don't know, say you're playing 4 against 4, and you have 2 neutral players playing with the team in possession. So you're basically playing 6 against 4, but those mannequins, even though they can't move, become sort of defenders. So you know that if my team hit the mannequin, I will have to defend. So that forces the player to move a lot, and maybe like how active, we talk about being active to play and being prepared to play. So can I get the ball, take the ball forward, and then that's my job. But if I'm blocked by someone, then the pass has to maybe go to a different player, and then my job is supporting to be able to play the next pass. So how can I work with those movements? So it's just about deciding how you want to play, and as I said, we don't have a certain system. We don't before every game we play, the TV company will put our lineup in a 4-3-3. And I don't think we've played a traditional 4-3-3 in any game. That's sort of that's the system people around us talk about. We only talk about, okay, today these spaces are important. Then if it's a center back playing in central midfield, or if it's a number 10 dropping, or if it's a right back coming in, that is the decision on which players we have available and which players we think suit that particular role of the day. So I just, mine and Kim's way of looking at it is like, don't get stuck into systems and formations, more like how do you want to take the ball forward, for example. Exactly. How do you want to do that?
And football's kind of changing, isn't it? I think, these days, the traditional kind of, like you said, formation graphics, it's kind of, they're almost out of date in a way, isn't it? Because you might have that for the opening bit, but like you just said there, after 15 minutes against the AIK, you guys changed your style, and looked at how the game goes and sort of made adjustments to positioning. So it's almost kind of going out of style a little bit, the kind of formation graphic. I wanted to quickly ask you, and you can also touch on that as well in your answer, but what, in your opinion, maybe is the next sort of big tactical evolution in football, in your opinion? How do you see the game going? We obviously had the possession style of kind of Pep, at Barcelona, for example, and then we kind of had that kind of Klopp style gegenpressing, and styles of football always evolve and change, don't they? What would you say, maybe, David, is the next big tactical evolution in football? And obviously you can incorporate what I mentioned there about formations in your answer.
Firstly, the formation bit. So I just to be clear, so I don't want to people listening to this won't think that this guy just thinks formation doesn't matter. I think formations, in terms of how you position yourself on the pitch, is crucial, because that creates the conditions to play the way we want to play.
Right. Yeah.
Then whoever does that, and whoever is in that position, that for us doesn't really matter. That's just we had Oscar Johansson, for example, is brilliant as a right-sided number 10. So we want to use him there as much as possible. But it's not like we don't have to say we play 4-2-3-1 for him to play as a right-sided 10. We can play, I don't know, 3-2-2-3 or whatever you want to call it. That doesn't matter. The positioning is crucial, but the formation, in terms of we play 4-4-2 or we play 4-2-3-1 or we play 3-4-3, that doesn't matter for us. But the positioning is important. That's the only thing I wanna leave people with there for the way we see football. In terms of I think the second part of your question, I think we're already seeing a certain development towards teams being more and more vertical in the way they play the game. And I think if you look at a team like even Manchester City, I think I don't watch them every week, so I might be wrong, but my belief when I watch them now is that they are much more vertical in the way they play their possession football than they maybe were before. They go in behind more than they used to do, and they are more geared towards playing the ball as much as possible forward, and they want teams to come up and press them because that opens up space. And I think if you look at the way we play, I think we are very much vertical in the way we play. We don't want to have the ball just to have the ball. If we have 37% possession but create a lot of different opportunities through control possession, so if we need 2 passes to play through a team, we'll take the 2 passes. We don't need 25. And I think that sort of verticality is coming more and more. And I think you see it with Bayern Munich, with like the way Nagelsmann plays football. I think that sort of football is growing a lot. That you go from how quickly can we go with control from our box to the other box. And I think again, the 2 goals we scored yesterday, we go from our box to their box in 3 or 4 passes, but those passes are played with control. So it's not like punting the ball up the pitch. It's building from the back, but having a very, very much a vertical focus. And then it's about creating the conditions for that. So you might want to provoke a team to press you. You might want to lure them up to open up space, or you might want them to drop, because then you get there naturally. If you're very good at breaking down teams when you get there.
Kind of like building up with speed, isn't it? Like more kind of fast transitions and getting up the pitch.
And then I think that places demands on what you do when you don't have the ball, because if you risk more in possession, like we, for example, would do, that we try and play the ball forward as much as possible when the opportunity is right, then we will also lose the ball more. So then we have to be very good at counter pressing, and we have to be very good at just normal pressing when we don't have the ball, so we get it back. And I think that's something that it was just a side note, but it was I think it was Colin Carpenter from StatsBomb who tweeted out a graphic with different teams in top leagues, how they go from when they press the ball, how many times they recover the ball, and how they then can go and create shots from their pressing.
Sure.
And I think his tweet was about all the leagues in Europe outside the top 5 leagues, and we were second in winning the ball back from starting pressing. And
wow.
But we weren't top on creating those 2 goals. I think it was a Belgian team that was ahead of us in terms of how many balls they actually recover from pressing. We were second. Then I asked him personally can you create one for the top leagues to just see how we compare. And then we were also second behind Leeds in terms of the number of balls you win from pressing. And the third place team were Bayern Munich. And then you would say Bayern Munich, they have 65% possession every game. And like Man City were a lot further down in terms of how many balls they recover to get from pressing, because they normally press less than we would do, because we don't have as much possession of them, and that's natural. But Bayern are on 65% possession, and they virtually recover as many balls as we do, and we average maybe 48% possession. So that tells you something about the verticality of the way they play with, because if you have 65% possession and you just move the ball in a safe manner, then you will not get as many opportunities to get the ball back, because you won't lose the ball. But if they on almost 20% more possession a game than us are just behind us in the number of balls they recover, then that tells you something about the verticality of their play. And I think that's
that's not possession adjusted then. So that's crazy, isn't it? If you have
So that leaves United very transitional team, going very quickly from box to box. And then you have us, who press with all the players all the time. And then you had Bayern Munich, who also press a lot, but you wouldn't think they were up there in terms of getting balls back. But they were actually, it's fascinating stuff. And I think that will continue. I think that sort of trend of vertical football will grow and become even better.
Yeah, I think I might even ask you for that graphic afterwards. Maybe we can tweet it out and kind of people can have a look at it if you've got it to hand. I think our co-host Steve will be happy with that as a Leeds fan, seeing them doing so well. But yeah, no, quality stuff. we've got a little bit more time. I mean, I want to kind of touch on a few players in the squad, and we've got also a few listener questions. So I don't want to take up too much of your time, but if you've got a little bit of time for a few more questions, if that's okay.
Go on.
I mean, if you had one piece of advice for, you've done so much and you're still only young, like you said, you started last season, you're in the 5th division. So it's an incredible rise, even for yourself, not just Värnamo. But if you had a bit of advice for someone looking to work in football, what would the advice be? It sounds like you're, really someone with a bright future in the game. What would your advice be in terms of what you need to do to get into it? Whether it's kind of even just scouting, coaching, whatever. Like, what's your advice for how you've got to your position?
I think you have to do a lot to improve yourself all the time. I think, from my perspective, this is basically the first time I've gotten paid to coach, which just I've as much time and effort as I put in now. Maybe not time because I've had other jobs as well, but in terms of effort, I think I bring the same today that I did when I coached the academy teams at Boden or when I coached Division 5. I try to make myself the best possible version of a coach I can be, and to bring that to my players and my teams. I think that's the same for everything. If you want to work in football, I think the competition and the number of people that want to work in this industry is, it's mind-boggling. I think a lot of people every day go and coach at grassroots level and maybe at amateur clubs for very, very little financial reward. And I've been there and Kim's been there. For example, if you just take us two as examples, we've tried and become better coaches every day. And I think that's the advice I would give. And then if you have something that's like stands out for yourself as a coach or as a person, and whether that be you being really good at video analysis, I think you have a place at most clubs. If you're really good at fitness, if you're really good at creating, like I mentioned with Kim, being extremely good in build-up play and attacking the box, for example, if you really work on stuff like that, or if you're really into set pieces and you become brilliant at coaching that, I think if you can find some sort of edge towards others, I think you have a good chance. And then I think it's sadly, in a way, that it's a lot about connections, about getting to know the right people at the right time. Like I wouldn't coach here this season if I hadn't gone to Sylvia last season and gotten to know the people there. And I have full confidence in myself as a coach that I'm good enough to be at this level, but you still need some sort of luck, and you need to get to know the right people at the right time to get those opportunities. And then when you're in, I think you have to work twice as hard to stay, because it's a results industry. If we lose every game, we might be out of a job. So So I think it's a constant quest of bettering yourself and finding something that makes you stand out from others. And I might have something that makes me stand out, and Kim might have something that makes him stand out. And I bet a lot of people who are not at the same level, at the top level in whichever country they work in, and they have something that makes them stand out. So it's just about broadcasting that to people and to the world, and then you never know what might happen. So try to find something that you're really good at, and then work every day to become a better coach, regardless of which level you're at.
I love that advice. I think it's really, really helpful for people who might be, looking to coach or get into football in general. I mean, just a couple more questions in terms of Kim himself. How far do you think he can go as a manager? Because he's had a pretty good start, like you said. Still a young coach as well himself. I think he's only 34, if I'm right in saying.
Yeah.
You work with him day to day and see everything he does. What do you think his ceiling is as well?
I'd be very surprised to not see him coach in other countries than Sweden. I think I'm obviously biased working with him, and I'm pretty sure he will listen to this to keep up to date with what I'm saying. But I think, in all honesty, I think he is the brightest football mind I've come across. I think he has a skill for spotting details in the game that make all the difference, that very few have. And I think that's also a challenge for me as his assistant, because I can never know 100% the way we play, because it's in his head. He decides, he sees things, and based on the football he wants to play. So he might see something. We see the same clip. I know exactly the style of play, but he might pick up on something that I won't because it's in his head. So that's also a challenge for me as an assistant to constantly try and understand everything. So when we have video meetings, we tend to divide them a lot. So he will often do more on the attacking side of the game, and I will do more on the defensive side. And then on the pitch, likewise, I work a lot on the defensive, like the pressing, and run sessions on that. And then Kim will run more sessions on the attacking game, and we tend to split build-up play a lot in between each other. He does a little bit more low defending as well. And it's a challenge for me to constantly keep up with, because football is and the style of play is constantly changing as well. So I think we've changed a lot from January in the way we view things and the way we approach things, because it's a constant process. And a really crucial aspect of the way he does things is that he is very good at spotting details, as I said. And I think when we have video meetings, when we are on the pitch, I have to be as attentive as the players, because for me, I can never know 100% what the game is like in his head, because he decides what we should do and how we always develop. So a challenge for me as an assistant is to try and keep up, so I'm at the same page all the time with him. And I think the way he is constantly looking for ways to improve himself and the team will only help him improve further. And I think the quality he already has in terms of organizing the attacking play, and he's very good as a defensive coach as well. I think he can coach in whichever league, and I think a lot of clubs in Europe and I don't know, the rest of the world too would be lucky to have him as a coach, because I think he's very, very good. Biased as though I am, I think he is definitely one of the best coaches I've come across, and I think I struggle to see how a lot of people would be a lot better than him in terms of the way he does things. And then he would tell you himself that he's just starting out and he has a lot to improve, and I think we all do. So it's going to be interesting to see where he goes, and hopefully I can join him on the journey for as long as possible, because I think we work really well together at the moment.
Yeah, and given the success you've had so far, I mean, we had a listener question, which I'll just sort of very briefly touch on. You don't have to go into much detail on it. But we got another question from a Flying Dutchman who says, how difficult is it to adapt in Allsvenskan as a first timer? And, I can imagine that the aim for the club is kind of just to stay up. And at the moment, you're kind of achieving that goal. And even with the metrics we've mentioned, kind of doing just a sign of how well you're doing, isn't it? On such a low budget, probably the lowest budget in the league.
Yeah, I think that's testament to the attitude of everyone around the place. I think in terms of the players, they bring a lot of energy and a lot of enthusiasm every day to become better. And I think us coaches, we do a lot of things for these players and help to educate them in the way we want to play all the time. And I think given the quality our head coach has, and how I, in my role, try and support him to the best of my ability, and with the players we have and the way they improve every day, I think we've adapted very well. As I said, our performances have been very, very good. I have felt in games that we play better teams. We got beaten by Djurgården and Elfsborg with big figures, but I think the games were still close. And the Djurgården game, they scored 5 goals from, depending on where you look, they had an XG of around 1.8 to 2.2, and we had 1. So it was a pretty even game in terms of statistical analysis and in terms of our understanding of the game. But then they had a lot of quality in decisive moments and scored 5 goals. So I think we've adapted really well, and that's testament to the players first and foremost, because they have to do it on the pitch. I can do as much as possible. Kim can do as much as possible, but on the pitch they have to actually execute everything. So it's a testament to their ability to constantly look for ways to improve on an individual level, on a collective level, and then being able to adapt when we go and play against really, really, really good teams, especially when we go away from home to some of these big stadiums. And we have a lot of those games coming up now in the next few weeks. So I think we've adapted well performance-wise, and I think it's very tough because you have to work extremely hard to be able to do it. And I think for us, it's so far so good in terms of adapting to the level. And then it's about getting the absolute maximum result we can, so make sure that we can play in this league next season as well, and hopefully for us we can get some good results now and push up even further, so we don't have to look around our shoulders all the way into the first weekend of November when the league finishes. But that's going to be a tall ask, but we'll give everything we've got.
No, fantastic. And thank you to Flying Dutchman. I'm going to kind of try and tie in the last few questions that we have into one, basically. Okay. So I did want to ask you about a couple of the players. And you also did mention about kind of verticality and the changing, evolution of football a little bit. And, we talked about Manchester City and obviously Liverpool, kind of two of the best teams in Europe, maybe. They've both recently sort of signed big strikers, haven't they? Maybe they're going to adapt their game model in that sense. Maybe Darwin Núñez, Erling Haaland. And obviously wanted to talk to you guys about sort of Marcus Andersson because he's had such an impact, seven league goals. He's been a real focal point for you. It also ties into a question that we have from at Football in DK, Football in Denmark, who says, does a traditional 4-4-2 still have its place in modern football? Almost all the teams play with a single striker now and wingers, but is this just a current fad or is it a necessity? Maybe not so much on the 4-4-2 bit, but I just wanted to get your opinion firstly on Marcus Andersson. And secondly, the importance of a sort of a striker like that in Allsvenskan and in general in football, and your perspectives on him as a person, what he's brought to the group, and then also a little bit in terms of philosophically strikers, the role of strikers in modern football.
Absolutely. So starting with Marcus, I think we could not have signed a better person to the team when we brought him in late January. I think he's had a very good career. I think he played in England for a few years for Blackburn and Leeds, and he's played at Malmö and Kalmar and done really well everywhere he's been, really. So he's he came with a track record of being a very good striker. He also basically was the only one who had played games in Allsvenskan for us. So we had Oskar Johansson playing, I think, 12 times for Trelleborg a few years ago. And then we had Robin Tihi, who played, I think, the same 11 or 12 games for AIK a few years ago as well. So Marcus was basically the only one with proper experience for playing in Allsvenskan. So he has been crucial for us in terms of not so much leading by being he is a vocal leader, but it's more like he leads by example. He is a super professional. I think he has a brilliant work ethic and an attitude to learn, because it's easy for a striker who's over 30 to come and say that, yeah, I've done some things my entire career, and now Kim Hellberg and David Selini wants to change my style so I can do something different. It's very easy to then just say, you know what, I've done pretty well for myself doing my way. Why should I adapt to your way just because you tell me that's better? And then I think he has been very open and very attentive to everything we've tried to tell him. And I think he and Kim, they work a lot together in terms of how can he improve his movements in the box, which spaces does he attack, how can he improve in his movement in the box, how can he improve in his overall play. They use video a lot. I think he brings clips to show Kim. He comes to me to talk about pressing strategies and what he feels we can improve and what he feels works well for us. So I think he's a super person, and he's been a really important player for us. He brings a sort of opportunity for us to go into him early as a target player. He's improved his target play brilliantly, and that can help bring our creative tens into play more. And I think he is exceptional at finding the right spaces in the box, which helps create space for others as well and for himself. So he is just a fantastic player to work with, and I think if he continues in the way he has been doing now, he can score a lot more goals. Because I think we had a look today. Actually, I think he was probably the top player in Allsvenskan on open play XG. So he's even higher than Jeremejeff, who has a bunch of penalties as well. So I think he's getting himself into a lot of good areas, and I think as a team we create those opportunities for him. But I think it's still up to him to get to those positions and get to those spaces where he can score goals, and long may it continues that he is on this goal scoring form, because that can only help us get the results we need. In terms of strikers in general, I think both David Núñez and Haaland tie into two discussions. They both suit a very vertical style of play because they are extremely quick and good at attacking the spacing behind. They make good runs into those, what you call them, half space channels. Haaland especially to the left, and I think Nunez as well from what I've seen. So I think they suit that, and they also suit the opportunity to play higher balls into the box when you're facing a deep block, and that's something we also get advantage from with Marcus because he's really good in the air. So I think as teams become more and more central and want to block off central spaces as a consequence of that, you are forced to go wide. So you have to be good in the wide areas by either getting the ball into the box, that could be the help of a big center forward, or by going from the wide area into those half space channels and getting the ball into the box from there, either in behind the defense or above the defense. And if you can then have a striker who can maybe bind up a few players in the box, that can only help you. But then again, when you look at Kalmar, who often play without that recognized number 9, they are very good at getting others to maybe run into those areas. So there are always different solutions, but I think as long as you have someone who attacks those spaces and get in those areas around and not around, but in between the posts, you have a good chance of scoring goals if you have certain methods to unlock those defenses. And players like Antonsson, Darwin Nunez, and Haaland, what a company he's in there, by the way, Marcus. He will be happy with that. They will always be beneficial. So I think we might see more top teams opting for those kind of strikers. You have Dusan Vlahovic at Juventus as well, who they paid big money for. Players who can attack spacing behind, but can also be very physically strong. So I think it can only be a benefit.
No, fantastic. It's been so good to talk to you, David. Really interesting insights in coaching, tactics, so many different elements of it. Just one final question before we let you go. Just wrapping it up all. Financially, how important is it for Värnamo to stay in the league this season? And kind of is the aim? I guess it's just to stay up, isn't it? Do everything in your power for the next 15 games to kind of keep the team in the league and then kind of build from there.
Yeah, since the points we've brought in so far are not really enough for us to at the moment think about finishing that much higher. I think we will do everything we can to get as many points as possible and better our return from the first half of the season. So hopefully we can finish in 10th or 8th, whatever what's possible based on other results. But we're also realistic enough to know that at the moment it's about keeping ourselves above the relegation place and the relegation playoff. So of course that's the aim. I think due to the, what I would say, sensible nature of the club and the way we've invested in the squad and in everything around the club, I think if we would get relegated, I think we would be in a good position to bounce straight back up, because we are not paying extortionate amount of money to any players. We have not most, but a lot of the players are on the contract for next season as well. So I think if we would get relegated, we would be fine from a financial sense. But of course, everything around the place, everyone in the city now, we want to play in this league, and it would be worse on a psychological level than it would be on a financial level to get relegated. But at the moment, we are feeling confident in our ability to stay up for next year as well.
Amazing stuff, and I wish you the very best of it. It sounds like, according to the metrics, you're doing well. Let's see if it can even itself out, and I hope it does. You've brought a freshness to Allsvenskan, I think, which has been really, really refreshing, the way you approach games and the style of play and everything. So I really wish you all the best of luck. We'll keep a very close eye on you. Where can we sort of follow you? Is there any, if people maybe want to know a little bit more about yourself? I know you're on Twitter. Do you want to plug anything in particular?
Yeah, no, it's that will be my Twitter account. So that's at David Selini. And so as you said earlier, quite open. We want to post stuff to inspire other coaches, because we've both me and Kim have been on the other side where it's difficult to get a hold of good training content or whatever it is. Now we film all the sessions so we can share certain stuff. So it's just people should feel free to get in touch if they have questions, if they want something to discuss. I'm always open, so just send me a message on Twitter. Otherwise, just try and watch some games, and hopefully we can bring some good football to everyone's television screens.
Well, good luck to yourself and good luck to Värnamo for the rest of the season. I've really enjoyed sitting down with you. Thank you so much, David. That'll be all for this week. You can join us as well on Twitter at Nordic Footpod if you'd like to sort of follow us on Twitter as well, and or patreon.com/Nordic Football Podcast for the extra bonus content. But for now, thank you so much, David Selini of Värnamo assistant coach. Really fascinating insights. Do let us know what you think of the show. Send us a message or tweet or comment on YouTube. And we'll be back very soon as well with more general coverage of Allsvenskan and Itinerary and Danish football as well, which we cover a lot this season. So thanks a lot. Thank you to David again. My name is Jonathan Fadugba, and we'll be back very soon. So for now, have a great evening or day and take care. Goodbye.